is one of the country's prestigious institutions of higher learning. That's Wits University is celebrating 100 years of existence. It was established back in 1922, and over the years, it's seen to fight for free education during the Fees Must Fall protests, and there have also been accusations of not being necessarily accessible enough for those coming from previously disadvantaged communities. But it's also produced several influential world leaders, and that's putting it mildly, because they include, for instance, the late former President Nelson Mandela, among several other people. So for more on the journey thus far, the legacy of the institution and the way forward, let's bring in Wits University's Vice-Chancellor, that's Professor Zeblon Vilakazi, who's with us in our studios this Thursday morning. Prof, lovely to see you. Thank you so much indeed for making the journey to our studios. So 100 years, and I guess, you know, for an institution like that, you can only take credit for the kind of contributions you've made at the time that you've been there and ride that legacy, as it were. But we're in a very interesting space when it comes to universities, especially in the global south, because there have been these kind of renewed conversations about ways through which these institutions detach from their Western legacies, as it were, and start meaningfully responding to the challenges in communities where they find themselves. How well do you reckon Wits is doing there?
I mean, if you look at the community where we are located, that is Braamfontein, and Wits has been central in ensuring that, unlike private companies who have relocated to the loftier sites of Johannesburg and northern suburbs, Wits chose to remain in the city, in the inner city of Johannesburg and Braamfontein. And we've developed a digital innovation precinct to equip local youth with skills for the economy of the 21st century. Yeah. So, you know, that is just an example of actually embedding yourself in the community. Noting, however, that universities have to address local and global problems. I mean, climate change is the global problem.
Sure.
If you over-localize yourself, you do not know how to get the latest technologies in solving for the emerging pandemics, like the future COVID-type pandemics that might happen. So there is a balance between over-localizing and losing out on the global developments in the era of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and all these other digital changes that are happening. And also we've got a facility in the in Bushbuck Ridge, which is for rural health, and where we actually are working with local communities in solving some of the issues around rural health in those areas, using our rural facility there.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, especially when you consider sometimes some of the more recent challenges, let's put it that way, that Wits University may have faced. I mean, I mentioned the Fees Must Fall protest there, and who could forget the moment at the time it was Adam Habib when he was kind of held against his will, let's face it, because students had reached boiling point. Part of the mandate or the request at the time was for meaningful engagement with the content that is taught at universities. Decolonization was the big buzzword at the time. You know, this move away, or this concerted effort to change the curriculum so that it speaks to what people are currently experiencing. So, geographically speaking, sure, Wits is very much in Braamfontein, and there, I guess, symbolically that's important. But when it comes to the kind of the knowledge that's being produced there, I wonder to what extent do you feel, for instance, you've been able to respond to what students were raising at that time?
Well, I think this is not a new topic at all. I mean, contextualization is very important. I'll give you an example. That if you do not produce knowledge, then you'll always receive knowledge from the global north, which is where the center of power lies. So you have to produce knowledge. How do you produce knowledge? You produce knowledge by doing research and creating your own knowledge. That, at least, is my interpretation. I mean, that you have to create your own knowledge. Africa, at this stage, only creates 1% of all global knowledge that comes out. There's no reason why we were in the back of the queue when it came to the procurement of COVID vaccines, right? And I think therein lies the problem, that we need to produce knowledge. We need to produce Nobel Prize winning knowledge. We need to produce companies that will scale, like Google has done. And that has been our vision statement for the university. We are future focused. We have acknowledged the problems, but we don't want to be stuck and be stuck in that kind of debate.
Yeah.
I think we've decided to actually take the lessons of the past and see how we leapfrog and project into the future for the next generations to come.
Because these institutions have been around for so long, understandably, many people will have different views about how they should be run. You know, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention what's currently taking place at UCT, and I'm not asking you to weigh in on what is said about your colleague there, Mamokgethi Phakeng. But I do wonder whether there's space for a conversation around, you know, what it is like to lead an institution like Wits University, given just how many people, for instance, even at leadership level, would want to have a say about where the institution should be headed?
Well, I think I'm having the greatest job in the country, leading.
Oh, you're having a better time than your colleague there.
Yes, I'm not going to say that. Obviously there will be challenges that will come my way as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to the leader to have the resilience to manage all the side winds, crosswinds that buffet against you. So, I've had and I'm thankful to the university community for coming together during this period of our centenary. From labor to students to the entire academic and community of workers at the university to support the centenary and send a message that despite all the negative news we receive, that there are beacons of hope and beacons of excellence that will serve to lift the gaze of the nation. That, and universities have always been, since they were established in 1,000 years ago in many parts of the world, have been that source of inspiration and also a source of contestation as well, to answer your question. And I think that's part of what makes us a university. We are not a political party. We don't represent one singular view. We have got a multiplicity of views, and that among some of the smartest people you can find that work around you, obviously you expect challenges. If you've got clustering of smart people, they'll all have their own opinion.
Right. But on the whole, I imagine you feel like you do have the support that you need to do your job.
I would say so. Of course there'll be challenges in the future, and we just need to deal with them as they arrive.
Sure, fair enough. I won't push any further. Let's speak about challenges in health. Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital has links to Wits University, and it's seen as one of the better performing institutions, at least public health institutions, not only in the province, but actually in the country. It's had its fair share of challenges, and in fact, we've spoken to some academics from the institution you lead who are really concerned about the impact that might have on things like ratings, for instance, of those hospitals, the kind of academic assistance you can give to doctors in training. How much of a concern is that for you as the leader of Wits University, given what we've seen taking place at Charlotte? And let's face it, the kind of political interference, so to speak, around why we're not able to address some of those issues quick enough.
I think the issues of health, public health in South Africa have to be solved by public health practitioners who are experts in the area, of course, given the right political will. We do have, arguably, some of the leading, and I'm sure you've seen them, how they responded to the COVID pandemic. We do have the world-leading health clinicians who can work anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
They can easily jump tomorrow and go to Harvard School of Public Health, to use an example, and it will be a loss to South Africa. And part of our challenge in managing this problem is to actually keep our best expertise in the country. Africa suffers from a huge brain drain. So therefore, my clarion call, my message to those out there in positions of power is that let's not take for granted what we have. It's my job as the Vice-Chancellor, working in partnership with the province, to ensure that we put the right instruments in place, in form of the memoranda in place, to allow for working conditions of these clinicians to be better for them to do what their calling is, which is to give, to help people with their health.
Would you have insight into how, the challenges that Charlotte Maxeke has affected Wits' ability to train doctors?
Well, I mean, the ability to train doctors is an academic program. The issue is around placement, right? And of course, they do occasionally have to do ward rounds.
Right.
And that was a challenge. In particular, our biggest challenge really was in the dental program, because the dental school and the dental hospital is located in Charlotte Maxeke, and therefore we almost ran a risk of not completing the year, which meant that 12 million people in this area of kind of reef, I'm talking about East Rand, West Rand, and Goroleni here, and West Rand, and ECD would not have dental care. That shows how important this university is, and therefore mustn't be taken for granted that, should things go wrong, the mostly indigent people, poor people, will suffer because these are public hospitals.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm giving an example here of where we, had challenges with regards to matters of public health. But we've continued. I mean, our medical program continues. Our research is going strong. But that is against all the challenges we face. And I think it would be helpful if we continue engaging with all the, as you have done, with the province and the national government, in ensuring that we provide better healthcare facilities, public healthcare facilities for our communities.
Sure. Speaking about indigent people, there's also been this sustained concern around access to Wits University. You know, it's seen as this, and rightly so, it's a very prestigious institution to be at. You have to work very hard to be there. In fact, there's a running joke about how people who've gone to Wits will make sure that they inserted that in any conversation they have because they want to be associated with the institution. But on the other side of that is concerns around access, right? Whether or not it's accessible enough to everybody who deserves to be there. Do you feel like you've done enough over the 100 years to address that issue?
Well, actually, we are the first university, despite the fact that government never allowed us to actually award a PhD to a South African, Black South African, Zeblon Vilakazi, no relations. But, and we are the first to produce the first black female doctor, the first black female engineer. So therefore, we've been at the forefront. If you're at the forefront, you obviously are right on the stage, so you'll be criticized because you are there as a pioneer, you're the first. So therefore, that's a critique well received. But I think, given where data sits, I think that assertion, that accusation is not true. Because if you look at the fact that we have got a broadly demographically representative student population, where we might be accused of inaccessibility is in terms of entrance requirements. We made it clear that you are elite but not elitist, that you are open to everyone who has the academic credentials to qualify to get a degree at Wits. Because if you're open for all, then it's not, you are setting them up for failure.
Sure. Right. 100 years of existence, we're never going to be able to ventilate everything during this sitting. Thanks so much indeed, nonetheless, for helping us sort of go through the reflections of this institution, which, no matter how you see Wits University, by the way, its role in our history cannot be understated. And I guess we all have an interest in seeing institutions like these continue to flourish. Wits University's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi, once again, thanks very much indeed for coming through. Thank you.